Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our RAD Live Q&A on RAD Rent setting, specifically on the FY 2018 RAD Rents that we published last month or a couple months ago. Thank you all for joining us. For those who've joined before, you're familiar, but for anyone new, the GoToWebinar feature allows you to submit questions through the box on your right, or to request to raise your hand and ask your question live, which is great if you want to have a little bit of a conversation with us about any of the topics we're discussing today. We will likely hold questions to the end. This presentation isn't very long, probably take about 20 minutes or so, and then we can get to your questions at the end. Okay, so this presentation is on RAD rent setting, and I'm going to start with a little bit of background. So RAD authorizes the conversion of assistance of public housing properties. Literally, we're talking about the conversion of assistance, conversion of the public housing assistance provided through the Public Housing ACC to Section 8 assistance provided under a HAP contract. And the big question when we started RAD was, how exactly do we set the contract rents? Congress, when authorizing RAD, provided no dedicated funding for the Section 8 contract. Instead, they directed us to transfer funds from the public housing accounts as conversions occur. Accordingly, we set rents based on the current public housing funding levels. They're not set based on traditional Section 8 rent levels associated with the market, but rather they're constructed based on public housing funding levels. We publish the RAD rents for every single public housing property, regardless of whether or not it is converting, on our website, HUD.gov/RAD. They are posted by bedroom size. And in those calculations, we show the components of the rent, what part came from the operating fund, tenant rents, and the capital fund. They're derived from year-end public housing, operating fund, capital fund, and tenant rent data. I'll take a quick minute to get into where we get the data from. So from the operating fund, it's the operating fund forms that PHAs submit every year. We add together the per unit month lines from that form. So for folks that are familiar, most importantly, the project expense level line and the utility expense level line, which make up the majority of eligibility, of operating fund eligibility. Plus we add in the add-ons. For tenant rents, we use the same form, and we use the PUM formula income line. And for the capital fund, while PHAs receive their capital fund as a grant to the overall PHA, HUD actually calculates it first at the development level and then aggregates it up. So we use the development level data. We net out for each project any RHF or DPF that HUD is providing for some units of properties that had been previously demolished or disposed, and we divide that amount by the standing units that the capital fund recognizes. So that's where we get the operating fund, the tenant rents, and the capital fund that we put together to come up with the RAD rents. And the RAD notice has all the detail on precisely the precise methodology we use. So the next question is, which year data do we use? So each time the RAD cap is increased, HUD is updated the RAD rent based on which the data is derived. So when we first started the program, we had authorization for 60,000 units. The base year was from fiscal year 2012, and then when it went from 60,000 to 185,000 unit cap, we updated 2014 rents. When it increased from 185,000 to 225,000 units, we updated to FY 2016 rents. And then when it increased most recently from 225,000 units to 455,000 units, we are now using the FY 2018 rents, with an asterisk that for a few months last year, we made modified 2016 rents available for closings that occurred between July and December that incorporated the 2018 capital fund levels, because those are quick and easy to get, but retained the 2016 operating fund and tenant rent levels. So those are no longer applicable. Now, where we are is any CHAPs issued or updated on or after January 1, 2019, so the world we're in now, are provided FY18 RAD rents. So the operating fund, capital fund, and tenant rents are all based on FY18 levels. Any applications that we've received that we're reviewing and processing will automatically receive these rents. But also PHAs with an active CHAP where they've not yet closed may request to update their CHAP to include the FY18 RAD rent. We strongly encourage PHAs to make the request as soon as they can prior to financing plan submission. If you end up putting in this request very near your closing, it's very likely to delay the closing as it takes time to actually update the CHAP as well as to review any impact on the changes in the rents. And any request should be submitted to your assigned transaction manager. We strongly encourage every PHA that has a CHAP to take a look at the FY18 rents. In many, many cases, they are improvements on the pre-existing rents that they may have gotten based on 2014 or 2016 levels. So it is definitely in PHA's best interest to review the rents and see if it would be beneficial to make the request. Just to refresh folks, prior to conversion, we update rents each year by the OCAF. So FY18 rents will be adjusted each year by HUD's published OCAF starting in 19. OCAFs, for those that are not familiar, are operating cost adjustment factors, and HUD publishes them each year in the Federal Register notice. So for a project that closes in March 2020, for example, initial contract rents will be based on FY18 funding with an OCAF adjustment for 2019 and for 2020. HUD makes these CHAP amendments for OCAFs automatically. PHAs don't need to request them. Any FY18 rents, any CHAPs that we're issuing now that use the FY18 rents, we are automatically applying the 2019 OCAF, so that will already be incorporated. Just to keep refreshing folks, the RAD notice, on top of using these FY18 rents, the RAD notice provides additional flexibilities for modifying RAD rents. We have a guide on this called the Overview of RAD CHAP Amendments and Contract Rent Flexibilities. It's on our RAD resource staff that you should definitely look through to make sure you are taking best advantage of the available subsidy. So that such adjustments can be allowed by exchanging any existing replacement housing factor or demolition, disposition, transition funding that you're receiving through the capital fund, augmenting rents with MTW funds, rent bundling between two or more RAD properties, rent bundling between a converting RAD property and a standard PBV contract, spreading subsidy for non-revenue special purpose units to contract units, capturing savings to tenant-paid utilities when you're doing rehab and you're going to improve the efficiency of tenant-paid utility, capturing any excess utility surcharge currently used in public housing, and capturing any existing energy performance contract resident-paid utility incentive. So a lot of information there. I strongly encourage that you look through this guide to get more detail, and again, to make sure that you're getting any subsidy that's due to the property. Just a final note that whether you convert to PBV or PBRA, there are rent caps applicable to each program. For project-based vouchers, initial contract rents cannot be any higher than up to 110% of the FMR, less the utility allowance, or the reasonable rent, effectively the market rents that any voucher program uses to make sure that rents don't exceed the market. For PBRA, rents cannot exceed 120% of the FMR. And in limited cases, the rent cap is actually up to 150% of FMR if it's still below the market rent as shown by a rent comparability study. But in the vast majority of cases, the published RAD rents don't exceed either the standard PBV or PBRA rent caps. So these caps really come into play in a very limited number of cases. Okay, that was the presentation. Hope that was not too quick, but we'd love to open it up for questions and see if we can get those solved.
Will, as you're looking at questions, when you ran the database comparing the 2016 modified to 2018, did it appear that more properties were going up or going down?
Yeah, so it looked like somewhere between 80 to 90% of all public housing properties would see a rent increase under the FY 2018 rents. So major reason why we're encouraging any PHAs with an active CHAP to look at these rents to make sure that they're getting the best possible deal they can.
And if I, for whatever reason, I'm with 20% or less, that the 2018 rents, I have a CHAP, the 2018 rents are going down, I don't have to take the 2018 rents, right?
That's right. Anybody with a pre-existing CHAP, if your rents are based on 2014 or 2016 levels or whatever else, if it's the PHA's option to retain that level, and they're not required to come in to request the rents. If they do come in and request them and we make the amendments, they can't go back, but it should be a pretty black and white decision. Nothing will change in the future that will modify or impact the calculation they can make today. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Will.
You're on the line?
Hey, Will. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. There was some allusion made to the rent bundling at the National Lease Housing Conference, and I don't know if I should go back and read the memo or if you could speak to that a little bit about how that works from PBRA RAD to PBRA RAD.
Sure. So the rent bundling is a provision in which if a PHA has two or more converting properties that are in the process of conversion, not yet converted,
Mm-hmm.
They can adjust the rents between the two properties in a cost-neutral way. So if two properties, 200-unit properties, had $800 rents, but one needed a bunch more work, PHA could convert one at $700 and the other at $900, and those amounts get baked into the initial contract rents. It's not a permanent cross-subsidization where money is streaming back and forth, but it's setting the initial rents in that adjusted way.
Okay, and is that being discussed with the people that are currently executing contracts, or because I hadn't heard that one. I hadn't heard that one before.
Sure. Yeah. So it's actually been a provision we've had for a few years now. We try to do like this, and a lot of folks have taken advantage of it to get the numbers to work.
Okay, great, awesome.
Thank you, Mary. Hey, Barry, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
I'm doing well. I had a couple of questions. I actually posted them out there. One was, have we heard any changes on the RAD for PRAC situation? I know that's been a pretty hot topic, especially within the PRAC community. I've been getting a lot of inquiries on that. But also, is there the possibility that down the road, RAD will open up budget-based rent increases versus just maintaining the auto or the OCAF increase?
So I'll take your second question first, because it's more pertinent to public housing conversions. So the statute that authorized RAD requires that rents for the term of an initial contract be adjusted by an operating cost adjustment factor. So we don't have the flexibility to change that to budget-based rents or market rents. That's what's been provided and what's available. On the second question about your and others' eager anticipation of the RAD for PRAC conversion option, the update there is probably in a few weeks we'll have some material out for public feedback. So we definitely encourage folks to pay attention. We'll send RAD blasts out about it to make sure people are aware, to make sure that we're designing the program in the right direction. It's well thought out and has the benefit of your all review. So look out for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next caller, Mark.
Yes, I was wondering, unless I'm doing it wrong, has the RAD tool ever been updated with these new rents and your current, expenses from the FDS? I had tried to go in and it seemed like the information in there was the same information from several years ago.
Mark, great question, and you're exactly right. What Mark's referring to is the RAD inventory assessment tool, which is a tool that allows PHAs to get kind of a quick and dirty assessment of the RAD rents and potential for leveraging debt and possibly tax credits for each property. And what's currently posted still has dated information. So we're in the process. We've just finished updating the rents itself, and we're looking to see if there are any other upgrades that we can make to the tool that can be done in a very short term, so we can push out an updated version. And again, we'll announce that through a RAD blast.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that tool was very helpful in doing the assessment. So.
A question we received in writing: is the process for requesting the 2018 rents as simple as an email to the transaction manager? Yes, if that is your simplest mode of communication, then email works, messenger, pigeon, fax, whatever you use. But yes, as long as you get the message to your transaction manager and list the property or properties that you wish to apply the 2018 rents to, it's that simple, the process, and usually it's less than 2 weeks to do so. Another question: so you can elaborate a little bit more on the amounts of the rent increases compared to the FY16 rents. Yeah, sure. So on average, we've seen the rents go up $40 to $50 per unit per month, which is a really sizable kind of increase that I think will definitely get a lot more properties across the finish line in terms of being able to viably convert, show that they can address capital needs today and take care of the property into the future. So this is a nice increase. What we essentially saw was in FY18, the capital fund had a much higher appropriation than it's had in the last 10 years or more, which was a big bump. And then we've seen, as we've been converting properties under RAD, the operating fund has stayed mostly steady, but is supporting a fewer number of units. And so that took had a little bump as well. Now the operating fund is still running at a prorated level, but it's still enabled a little bit of a bump up in the RAD rents. So that's why we're seeing increases there.
Will, could you also tell people that if they already have an RCC, they can request from the closing coordinator?
Great, thank you. So this is just in from Bev Rudman, Closing Coordinator Director, our Closing Division Director, that even if you have an RCC and you have not yet closed, you can still request the FY18 rents. As I said earlier, please get those requests in as soon as possible so it doesn't delay your closing, but it's still possible. You're still eligible as long as the property is not yet closing. Okay, we received another question around what the terms of the contract available and if there's a need for a rent comparable study and if there's an opportunity for a markup to the market rents. So for public housing conversions, there's almost never a need for a rent comparable study, comparability study at the time of conversion. Particularly for PBRA, it's just a comparison to the FMR level to make sure it doesn't exceed 120% of FMR. And for PBV, as I said earlier, it's up to 110% of FMR, or the reasonable rent, which is a PHA's voucher program version of a rent comp study. But there's no ability to get up to those levels. Those are just caps beyond which the RAD rents can't exceed. There is, during the initial term of the contract, there is no ability to mark up to a market rent. The rents are after conversion or subsequently adjusted only by the operating cost adjustment factor at the term of the contract. Another question, can you request the FY 2018 rents for 1 and 2 bedroom units, but keep the prior RAD rents for 3 bedroom units? Thanks, good question. Unfortunately, no, the rents would be requested for the entire property that's converting. The rents are requested by chap. So if you've got a chap with 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, all of the unit sizes would be updated if you requested the 2018 rents. Okay, any more questions? We ran through the questions we had in writing, and I don't see anyone else with their hands raised on the GoToWebinar, which is our favorite way of receiving questions. Here's a couple more. One question, should one apply the 2019 OCAF to the contract rents listed in the 2018 RAD rent schedule? Yes, for your planning purposes, any CHAP that we issue this year, gets updated this year, will have the 2018 RAD rents plus the 2019 OCAF. We'll do that automatically. As I said, we'll do that automatically when we issue the CHAP. But as you're planning and comparing the rents, look at the 2018 rents adjusted by your OCAF to make the comparison of is your current, how it compares with your existing CHAP. Thanks, George. Follow-up question from before, can the term of the contract be less than 20 years? And can rents be increased by market after that initial contract expires? So again, by statute, the term of the initial contract has to be 20 years. And then for PBRA contracts, it's then eligible for renewal under MARA after those 20 years, but the initial term can't be any shorter than 20 years. Thanks, Tony. Oh, and just to note that for PBV conversions, the initial term is 15 years, and up to 20 if the PHA and the owner agree. Okay, so we've gone through again any more written questions, and no one else has raised their hands. Okay, we have a few more written ones. Clarification, does the 2019 OCAF get added to the 2018 RAD rents? Yeah, just in case I misspoke earlier, yes, you have the published 2018 RAD rents, and you would, to see what your rent would be if we issued the chap today, to compare apples to apples to your current chap, you'd apply the 2019 OCAS to those 2018 rents. Okay, so I think we've gone through all the questions for folks who've dialed in. Thank you very much for joining. Look out. Let's see, actually a couple more come in. Hold on a second. Okay, so one person is having some difficulty accessing the 2018 rents. Yeah, for some reason we experienced this with a small minority of people. So shoot us an email. We'll send you the rents offline if worst case scenario, but otherwise we'll try to troubleshoot whatever issue you're having with the HUD site. Thank you, Stephen.
Who should they contact?
Send a note to rad@hud.gov. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I think that we will wrap up for the day. Oh, where are the OCAFs published? So if you just do a search in Google or Yahoo or your favorite search engine, search for HUD OCAF, and you'll find a link to the Federal Register. We had a link in this PowerPoint, which we'll post online to the RAD Resource Desk after this presentation, so you could also follow that, but otherwise, just a Google search you'll find the state OCAFs.
And will those, HUD publishes those OCAFs each year around when?
So this year is published in November. In November of 2018 for the 2019 OCAFs.
Well, I've heard some conversations about the OCAF being effective on the 1st of January or not effective until the 1st of February. Is there an issue around that?
Sure. So prior to conversion, we apply the OCAFs. We do the OCAF adjustment on a calendar year basis. Post-conversion, PHAs and owners should be aware, the OCAF for 2019 applies to adjustments that are made after something like February 11th of every year. So if the anniversary date of the contract is January 1st of 2019, then technically it's still the 2018 OCAF that would apply. But if the
in your second year.
Yeah, in your second year.
Second year being on Section 8
yep.
funding. Okay.
Yep.
So it does not affect when we go to closing.
Right. Right. For the OCAF adjustments that we make prior to closing, we just follow a strict calendar year basis. So at the end of December, we automatically update every chap by the OCAF. So folks get that in their inbox. All right, thanks again for joining. As I said, we'll post this presentation to our RAD Resource Desk, and we look forward to having you on future calls and webinars.